I hovered about in my room for a minute, then dressed up and went outside to speak to Sally. She opened her mouth in surprise when she saw me, staring at me like I'd lost some decorum. This was completely understandable. They had used me as a rag for so many years that it felt unheard of for me to seek them out. I'm not going to marry that boy. You know, the boy that you forced on me? Sally smiled patronizingly, like I was some stubborn child and her smile would set the record straight. Can't you hear me? I'm not going to marry Damon Messiah, and that is final.
She turned away and picked up her phone.
She was going to make a call and pretend that she didn't hear me, and that way the marriage would be final. I needed her to understand that this was it, and I wasn't going back on my words. Sally, if you have problems hearing me, then you may be possibly deaf and need a hospital, don't you think? She gasped, looking back at me. I smiled, knowing that she had acknowledged me and regardless, and my word was final. As I trudged up to my room, I made a self-discovery in which my eyes were open to how stupid redemption sounded. I'm not a sinner, and I do not need any redemption. The people in my life did. Perhaps this was my chance to exact revenge, to show them the error of their ways.
What did you do to her? What did you say to her?
I shifted at the sound of Sally's voice. It was loud and overbearing, like she was screaming at someone. I got up from my bed and stretched. I didn't even realize that I'd fallen asleep.
I didn't do anything. She just came down here and tore the wedding gown that I chose for her.
I walked to the door and pressed my ear against it. It was Sally and Damon. What started as a soft conversation must have risen due to agitation. I slowly opened the door and stepped out, then walked to the stairs and watched them from above. Damon looked frantic, desperate, like he should have eons ago.
You must talk to her. I don't like this recent attitude of hers, and you must have caused it.
I didn't do anything.
Well, you must have, so you must redeem whatever it is you did. If Eleanor refuses to marry you, then I can do nothing about it. I also cannot spare my other daughter. I have far more important plans for her.
Important plans for Peggy and silly ones for me. Sounds just like Sally. Please, Mrs. Lenz. I'm not going to marry you?
Can you just leave and stop causing ruckus here? You both disrupted my sleep, and I don't like it.
They both turned to look at me. There was slight twitch at the corners of Sally's mouth. She was getting infuriated and frustrated by my casual rants, which was what I intended. She didn't understand my sudden outburst and would rather it attributed to Damon and nothing else.
Can I speak to you for a minute, Eleanor?
Yes.
Talk to her. You both talk to each other and get this over with. I'm not exactly impressed with your couple spats. This is not a couple spats. Get out, Damon. I don't want to see you or hear of your plans for me.
He grimaced, the pain and disgrace written all over his face. Sally glanced sharply at him, as if telling him to move on and not let my sharp tone put him off. It was quite admirable how he stood strong in the face of adversity, but Damon was quite stubborn.
I'll leave you two alone.
Sally said as she walked past me and to her room. Smiling, I walked downstairs to meet Damon. The look on his face was so sad I felt sorry for him, but only for a short while.
Can we talk outside?
I shook my head, refusing before I even said the word. Nope, I don't want to speak to you in private.
It will only take a minute, please.
Then he grabbed my hand and took me outside. Once outside the villa, he went down on his knees. I stared at him, surprised. So this was why he wanted to be out, so no one would see him kneeling down to beg me.
Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me what it is and I'll apologize. I'm sorry, Eleanor, please.
No, I said, taking several steps back. What you did was done in the future, and I cannot forgive you for that.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I'm saying that I cannot forgive you, and I will not marry you.
But you don't know me. Please, Eleanor, give me a chance.
No, I'm sorry. I cannot do that. I don't know why I was apologizing, but it was not hard to see. Damon in the past was not a sweetheart, but he wasn't evil either. He wasn't as wicked as he'd become a year later. And if I really wanted my revenge, then I would have to do nothing with him. I'd have to go for everything that should have been mine in the beginning. Damon took my hand and held me desperately.
You don't understand. I need this marriage, please. My family is failing, and I only have the Lenz family to fall back on, if you refuse me.
I drew my hand away and he nearly fell back due to the lack of contact. Damon held himself back and I held my head high. No, Damon, I cannot marry you. I must go for what is mine. You understand? I don't care if he did or not. I left him kneeling in the sun as I retreated back into the house. I confined myself to my room for the rest of the day, picking out my most exquisite dress. There was nothing much in my wardrobe, as usual, but there should be something presentable and delicate, something I'd never worn before. If my memory served me correctly, then Peggy was supposed to meet Wesley Shalom tomorrow, the second son of the richest family in the country. Sally was able to have access to him because of the wealthy and famous status of the Lenz family, and that was a huge benefit in my favor. Since they have sworn that I shall never have peace, why don't I rewind the hand of clock and see how defeat looks on them? Giggling to myself, I danced about in my dressing room as the plan manifested in my head. Wesley Chalamet, you are mine. The next morning, I was all dressed to meet him, but I was not exactly sure where Peggy was meeting him. I tiptoed carefully to Sally's room and pressed my ear against the door. Then I glanced at my watch. 10:15 a.m. Peggy liked to be in Sally's room by 9 every morning to talk about her life problems and go over her schedule with her mother. It was safe to say that Sally would be telling her about the date this morning, and I was right. Sally's voice came out faintly when she spoke.
It's at the head bridge. You have to be there in 30 minutes. They have this coffee spot by the side, and the birds and water's the most romantic scene ever.
Peggy giggled girlishly, probably clinging to her mother's arm.
But, May, I'm not dressed. I don't have my makeup on, and you're telling me this late?
You're perfect. Don't put too much makeup on. I heard the second son of the Shalamots family doesn't bode well with makeup. I went through great pains to put up this blind date. Peggy, don't mess it up.
There was a short silence, followed by Peggy's whining.
You should have told me earlier.
I was dealing with Eleanor.
What did that bitch do again this time?
She refused to marry Damon, but that is not your problem. Go on now. Get that beautiful silver dress he got a week ago. Have you worn it yet?
No, Ma.
I leaned away from the door and hurried away. Wesley Chalamet was waiting for me at the head bridge of the Western Waters. I arrived 10 minutes early. That was fine by me. I sat down at an outdoor coffee shop that overlooked the waters. Sally was right. It indeed was a beautiful sight. I won't get over it so quickly. My mind panned over and over, thinking, planning, mapping out thoughts. I wanted Wesley to understand that ours was not a romantic relationship and didn't have to be one. My sole purpose was outshining Peggy. Whatever his motive was, we only needed to work hand in hand. When he arrived, he stood by the bridge and looked down at the waters, deep in thoughts. He was a beautiful man, tall and built. His brown hair fell over his well-sculpted face, giving the illusion of boyishness and manly strength at the same time. When he turned to look straight at me, the breath left my body. Wesley Chalamet walked straight to me, like there was nowhere else to go but to me. He walked with determination and purpose, as if he'd known that I was there already.
Eleanor Lenz,
He said, with a smile. He sat down opposite me, his eyes gleaming with interest. They were a bright sky blue, which contradicted his dark brown hair. It created this allure around him, this mystery that seemed to pull me in. And his body, oh, his body,
are you done staring?
he asked, his voice peeking into my head. I shook my head and cleared my throat. So embarrassing. Are you always aware?
Of course. How do you think I have attained such level of success?
Family? He laughed. His laughter was so rich and full and cranky. It was so unexpected, out of the blues. I didn't expect someone like him would know how to laugh. He looked so domineering.
Funny, Eleanor Lenz.
He said when he was done.
I was not expecting you, but this can do. It was interesting and intriguing to see that you had come.
You know me?
Of course.
He replied with a gleam in his eye.
I know all the Lenz family. I know that you are the eldest, and it was your sister I was meant to meet today. I know that you have a fiancé.
He drummed his hand on the table, thinking. That is not necessary, I said promptly, interrupting his train of thoughts. I'm not a real member of the Lenz family. I was adopted. He cocked his head at me. If Wesley was surprised, he didn't show it. He instead stared into my eyes, boring and like he wanted to fish something out. It was uncomfortable and intriguing at the same time, the way he paid utmost attention to me.
Is that so?
Yes, yes. And Damon isn't my fiancé. I've called it off. It is you that I want. He laughed again, a rich, filling sound that seemed to attract everyone that walked past us. Peggy, Peggy.
2 laughs in 1 sitting. You really are something, Eleanor Lenz. Or should I call you the princess of the Lenz family?
Believe me, I am nothing like a princess. He dragged his eyes over me slowly, as though trying to ascertain my words. I cleared my throat, bringing his eyes back up to mine. I may have phrased my earlier words carelessly,
No shit.
but you and I know that any marriage arrangement between your family and I is simply that, an arrangement. I want the both of us to talk about this at length, somewhere quiet and less intruding. He cocked his head at my words.
So you want me to marry you?
Yes. Does it matter to you? I added sharply when I saw the look in his eyes. It's a business marriage anyways. It doesn't matter which of the Lenz family you married. Then he stood up. His movement was so sudden that I stood up with hum, nearly spilling my cold coffee. He slipped his hand into his suit pocket, still staring at me. He extracted a card and placed it on the table, not breaking eye contact.
You intrigue me, princess. This is my room card. I'd like to see you afterward.
I looked down at the card, realizing that my heartbeat had slowed down and it was a hotel room card. Room 209. Oh, the bastard. He wants to sleep with me after one meeting. I laughed, rubbing my face and staring at the card.
Eleanor?
I turned. It was Peggy.